Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of the Coal Scene. I'm Chris Hamilton with the West Virginia Coal Association and I'll be your host for the next half hour. Today's program will feature highlights from the 40th Annual Mining Symposium held right here in Charleston. The symposium featured top industry and government speakers from around the state, focusing on a whole host of issues ranging from coal production, mine marketing situations, technical issues, and of course mine safety was a centerpiece of this year's symposium. We're going to show the highlights and we'll be back here in just a few moments.
Our coal exports continue to increase in West Virginia, and last year alone they increased by right at 40%, and that's about another $2.1 billion added to our economy in West Virginia. So it's so important that we continue to have these exports and as we produce coal in West Virginia.
How important is it for your staff then to be knocking on the doors overseas saying, we've got what you need?
Oh, absolutely. I think that we continue to do that. We get calls in our office. Obviously, we try to through the Coal Association, put buyers with the producers of coal, and it's an integral part. I mean, without these exports, our tax revenues will be down tremendously. So we do everything we can to facilitate the getting the buyers and the producers together.
Governor, recently, unfortunately, there's been a couple fatalities, and you took the step in really bringing safety to the forefront again with making sure that the companies here in West Virginia were speaking to their employees. Number one, how is that going? And number two, a follow-up to that will be, where are you going to go from here?
Sure. Yeah, mines on a regular basis have safety meetings with their employees. Sometimes we get complacent in our workplace or at home or wherever and not think about what's going on. But I think at all times when you're working on a mine site, whether it's underground or surface mines, we always need to be cognizant of the fact that it's dangerous there. You got to be on top of your game. You got to be always looking to make sure that that an accident could happen at any time. And sometimes the stand down, like I asked for a couple of weeks ago, just kind of re-emphasizes that and gets us to our miners thinking that we've got to do everything we can to follow the safety rules to make sure that no one gets hurt while we're producing coal. Now,
final question, Governor, and staying with the safety topic. What have you directed your staff? Communication is such a key in this industry.
Right.
What are you telling them to do to speak to the companies on this?
Well, absolutely. Our Department of Mines, Miner Safety, has visited over 500 of our mines in West Virginia, going in, working with the safety directors in the mines, making sure that they re-emphasize how important safety is. And I think the fact that during the stand down and within the few days after that, the fact that every mine in West Virginia was visited shows that we are serious about safety in our mines. We want to continue to work with the companies and work with the miners to make sure that we produce coal as safely as we possibly can.
You got a chance to speak to a number of coal industry officials, miners, etc. What are you telling the coal industry of West Virginia right now?
Well, I think there is a message of optimism in that our coal exporting numbers are way up, which is more West Virginians working. And I'm going to work in Washington to preserve that export market to make sure that we can have that future for coal. But then on a less optimistic note, the challenges of the regulatory environment that we have in Washington right now, where the president and his EPA head, and he has a new head now, seem to be more interested in governing by regulation than by legislation, and basically was trying to enlist the audience in helping us to fight that. And then trying to weave that balance between the environment and the economy. A coal economy is a jobs economy, and all of the above. Energy economy for this country is a jobs economy and a security issue. And of course it's a very receptive audience, which is great, but we need to be talking out to a lot of our fellow members and the rest of the country.
Do you feel like sometimes the coal industry is preaching to the choir instead of the full congregation?
Well, I think I mentioned that in my comments, that sometimes we have a tendency to talk to each other too much. That's why I started the Coal Caucus in Congress, to try to get members who have interests in coal and throughout the United States, but also use that as a platform to talk to our other members of Congress who are maybe less enthralled with coal or a negative about it, to show the jobs, the economy, the transportation, the water, all the other, the steel, the manufacturing, all the other industries that are heavily dependent on a cheaper resource for coal for energy production to keep us competitive.
Final question, I'll kind of combine
Okay.
a couple here. The future, where do you see the future for West Virginia coal in the national energy policy with the situation that the industry faces with an administration that is not in favor
Right.
of such an industry?
Well, I mean, I think the future of coal is difficult in the short term. I think that we're kind of cutting off our nose to spite our face, because we need that solid base energy production that coal provides for this country to keep moving forward and to move forward quicker. And so, you know, it's rough waters. But I think the future lies in more research and development. In the audience today were a lot of mining engineers from West Virginia University who are going to be working on the future of whether it's enhanced oil production because of coal, whether it's the remarkable research that's occurring now to find out a way to not combust coal, so you eliminate CO2 but you still get the energy resource from the coal. There's the Energy Lab in Morgantown working on this. That's where the future is: sequestration, carbon capture, all that. And so, you know, we can't just keep thinking we can go doing the same old, same old. We've got to use these new innovative ways to prolong the life of a very valuable resource.
What message or did you bring from Capitol Hill to these folks?
Well, my first quote was from the mayor of New York City to the fact that King Coal was dead. And with all due respect to the mayor, I had to strongly disagree with those words, because King Coal was always going to be King Coal. And coal is our most reliable, most abundant, most viable domestic source of energy. And coal is far from dead. It's strongly alive. Yes, we go through these cycles that we often go through, downturns, but coal is always going to be with us, our most reliable domestic source of energy production. And those in the big cities ought to realize, especially the mayor of New York City, how did he build those big skyscrapers if it wasn't for our West Virginia coal that goes into the making of steel? How does he keep the lights on in New York City if it wasn't for our West Virginia coal powering electricity of the big cities across his country? So there's so many in the industries that thrive in his home state would not be able to thrive without coal. So the mayor is a little off track when he pronounces coal is dead, and his campaign with the Sierra Club to kill coal is just not going to work. Yes, we go through these downturns, as I said, but it's important to recognize that coal does have friends in Congress, even though there are those from some pockets of this country who will never be for coal, who never will believe in clean coal technologies even though the technology is there today to clean up the burning of coal. But that's something we can overcome, and we must overcome and continue to fight the battles we fight. So we're fighting the good battle in Washington. Yes, it's true, we have an unfriendly administration. That does not help in these downturn times. In this administration and the new administrator at EPA, Gina McCartney, while the record is certainly out on her because she hasn't even been confirmed yet, and that's no sure thing, but should she be confirmed, then I would hope that we can have a meeting with her of coal state representatives of the coal industry, meet with her, go through some of these issues, because it's important that she realize the job repercussions of what decisions that come out of EPA mean for our working coal miners and our men and women across the coal fields. So, you know, let's hope that she'll do better, but I'm not truly optimistic at this point.
Congressman, we talk about educating the public about the coal industry and the need for coal. How much of a challenge is it for you, who you represent an area in West Virginia that depends quite a bit on coal, tremendously on coal in the industry, to educating your colleagues?
Very important. You know, the vast majority of my colleagues never been in a coal mine, have no idea the dangers, the hard work of our courageous coal miners across the coal field. And they need to see that and recognize what our coal miners do by going into the bowels of this earth to produce the energy that fuels our economy. They really need to see that. And I've, over the years, brought some down and invited others, and things haven't worked out. They haven't made it, but we'll continue to invite them. And the welcome mat is always open to my colleagues from around the Congress, around the country that want to come visit a coal mine. I'm sure that can be arranged. But, you know, coal does have support in the Congress, and that's evidenced by the fact that in the last Congress, my legislation, along with Congressman McKinley, in a bipartisan fashion, we did get bills passed out of the House of Representatives that sought to rein in the EPA, that sought to force them to cooperatively work with our states, not run roughshod over our states. Those bills have passed the House of Representatives, so that shows a pretty broad support in the Congress for coal. Where they have not passed has been in the other body, the United States Senate, where it takes 60 votes over there not only pass a tough bill, but even to say I love mother anymore, it's the rules are different in the other body, and that's why the legislation has not passed there. And then again, it probably would not get a presidential signature, so the work might be for naught. But at least the strong vote in the House, in a bipartisan fashion, I might add, I've secured probably 40 votes on my side of the aisle to pass these bills, and we'll continue to try to do that. The industry, though, recognizing the difficulties of getting a bill through Congress and through a presidential signature, has done what, unfortunately, is the only recourse they have left, which is go the judicial route. That they've done, and that they've been successful in a few cases, to show that EPA is not following the rule of law. They're not following the intent of Congress, and certainly they're not following the will, in my opinion, of the American people.
Congressman, you got a chance to speak to a number of industry officials, miners, engineers, et cetera, today. What's your message to them about the industry and what they're facing on Capitol Hill right now?
A lot of it is complex because people have to understand in Washington, people don't understand coal. They have a knee-jerk reaction because they think coal causes this whole litany of illnesses. And what we're trying to do is provide, as one of two engineers in Congress, we're trying to apply the science to demonstrate to people that it's not necessarily coal that's causing this. There are a whole host of other issues, but it's so easy for radical environmentalists or others to be able to simply blame coal. Well, when you blame coal, you really are going after the fabric of our economy. What's going to wind up doing is many of our miners will lose their job. Electricity is going to increase. Our families are going to be faced with higher energy bills. We just have to use our science, our background, as one of two engineers in Congress, to push back against that so that we start to educate people about what is the role of coal and what does it play. As you know, one of the other issues they talk about often in Washington, and it's very frustrating for us, is they talk about climate change, how all the climate change is occurring. All the climate changes going on in the world is a result of coal. Well, that's not accurate. We know over the period of years and cycles and in geologic time that it's not driven by coal, but yet so many people take the easy route out. People that have no scientific background, have not spent time in the field working in the mines. Remember, we mine coal in 27 states. We're affecting so many people all across America. We just need to have more people aware of coal and where the advantages it has, and know that it's not coal alone that's causing climate change. That's not the approach.
How much of a challenge is it for you to educate your colleagues?
It is a tremendous challenge because many of them want to just take the easy route out. They don't want to go back to school again, but I think we're going to have to do that. So one of the things we're doing this year, we're continuing from what we started last year, we're having summits around the country. Last year we had an international summit at Morgantown where we brought in people from all over the country, that we were talking about the role of coal into the future, of how we can have clean coal technology, what's happening at the National Energy Technology Laboratory, how important that is for us to continue to do that. This year, we're not only going to have that, the second annual Energy Summit, but we're also going to have a follow-up summit dealing with climate change. We think that our colleagues, as well as the American public, have to step back and realize that a lot of what's happening here has nothing whatsoever to do with coal. So when they want to blame Hurricane Sandy in New England on coal, it's shame on them. When one of the reporters for CNN was trying to say that asteroid passing by Earth was caused by global warming. It just shows how desperate some people are to try to put the final nail in the coffin on coal, but we're not going to let that happen.
Final question. Recently, President Obama has named a new EPA secretary. Your thoughts on that appointment?
Gina McCarthy and I have clashed in a very classic way over the first 2 years, but she approaches things slightly differently than Lisa McCarthy. We also have the environment. It's going to be interesting with Ernest Moniz, the new director of the Department of Energy, to whom she will answer. We don't yet know whether or not the new director or the new energy secretary is going to have the same attitude towards coal that Stephen Chu did. Because you remember, Stephen Chu's famous quote was, "Coal is his worst nightmare." I don't know whether Ernest has that same attitude towards that. We're going to see what happens with that and see whether or not he pushes that down to where Gina McCarthy then picks up on that and continues with it. So the jury's still out. I think we have to be fair, give them the opportunity to learn a little bit where they're going to come from. But if he's going to come after coal, then she's going to come after me, because we're going to have a fight tooth and nail on the floor. We're not going to let them destroy our coal industry.
3 years ago, we had a devastating accident in West Virginia. What have you seen since then in the progress of making it better for the guys and the gals who are working in the industry?
The first thing I think is just the shock that occurred after that we were that, I don't want to say bad as a mining industry, but I think that caught all of us off guard that something of that magnitude could occur in 2010. And I think it shocked the operators as well as it shocked me and MSHA. And I think the operators said, wow, we were going to have to look a little closer at what we're doing here and make sure that we don't have something like this occur at one of our mines. And naturally, MSHA did the same thing. We looked closer at mines to make sure there was not another UBB out there that was waiting to occur.
Has this opened up more dialogue, creative dialogue, positive dialogue, informative dialogue between MSHA and the operators and the associations?
I think it has. I think it's gone both ways. I think we're probably tougher on mines that we catch out of place, but the operators that do things right, I think it's a very good exchange of information. The mining industry, for whatever reason, all you hear about is the bad things. In West Virginia, there's a lot of good things going on in the coal industry, and the majority of operators are good operators that want to do the right thing, and I don't think anybody wants to see anybody die in a coal mine, even if you're not following the law.
You led me into my next portion, and that's West Virginia. The Coal Association, how progressive have they been? The coal operators that you communicate with, what steps have they taken?
Well, they've requested MSHA's presence at a number of their meetings. Chris Hamilton, Bill Rainey have invited me a number of times. Quite frankly, they did it before UBB, to come in and let's discuss things in a small group setting and try to work through things. And it's so much easier to do that than waiting till after something happens. West Virginia has a lot of good operators. I mean, we work very well with a lot of the companies. They come to headquarters. I come out and visit them and meet with them. In fact, I'm meeting with a couple of operators while I'm down here. And I think their heart's in the right place. The majority of people want to do the right thing, and that's the way it is here in West Virginia as well.
At the end of the day, Kevin, though, is mining coal, it's a dangerous occupation. Is the inevitable going to happen, and is MSHA just trying to keep that inevitable to be as small as possible?
Well, we do want to keep it as small as possible, but I'm going to give you two examples of why I think it can be done. There was an 8-month period a couple years ago that we went without an underground fatality. That, to me, that was huge. That's one number that knocked me off my feet, that if we could go 8 months, why can't we go 9 months? Why can't we go a year? 8 months in underground is huge. The second one I'm going to give you is there's not been an underground roof fall retreat mining fatality for 5 years. So I know that there's things that we can do right. And when I see these fatalities come in, I know they happen. But when you look at the root cause of it, they shouldn't happen. It's not like an act of God that created this thing. If everybody did their part, MSHA, the operator, the miner, I don't think we would be down into single-digit fatalities as a minimum, and maybe lower than that, closer to zero.
Being an outside observer, it seems like there's been more safety training since Whitesville in the last 3 years. More emphasis on hands-on safety training. Where do you see that?
I think you're correct in that. I mean, I think that's an important part of this, so miners know what they're being trained to do. The task training of running a scoop, maybe someone's going to be asked to run a scoop on a shift that they haven't done it before. Need to make sure that individual knows the proper way to do it so you don't run into somebody. Training's a big component. There's a lot more than enforcement that goes into a safe mine. That's my part of it, but my part is also making sure miners are trained, and the operators naturally have to make sure their miners are trained. So when they get into a situation that they know isn't right, they say, hey, wait a minute, let's back up here and let's think about what we're going to do to make this right.
The philosophy is a pretty simple one. First, we say safety is our core value. There's no higher value within our organization than safety, and that is non-negotiable. So values are a constant. They're not the same as priorities. Values won't change with time. Values won't change with market conditions. Values are a constant. So safety will always be our core value. The second thing, and the philosophy that we employ is within safety, is the concept of absolute zero. Absolute zero is a very simple concept. The only acceptable standard of performance that we're going to judge ourselves off of are 0 accidents on a day in and day out basis across the entire company. So in many ways it's a simple standard, but the reality of course is it's perfection. And perfection is a tough thing to capture even for moments in time, let alone over the long haul in anything you do. So we realize that that's a very high standard, the highest standard we can set, but because safety is our core value, and we do believe that mining and drilling for natural gas are not hazardous activities when done correctly, we need to set that standard at the highest level it can be.
Well, I think one of the consequences of having the president get reelected is that he's going to renew his assault on the West Virginia extraction industry. The good news is that finally West Virginia is going to have some cavalry arrive. Our office is going to make a top priority of reviewing and ultimately, where appropriate, challenging federal regulations that overreach statutory authority. So one of the things we've been doing is we've been looking very closely at a lot of the regulations that have been coming out. If you look at the startup shutdown rule that was just issued a couple weeks ago, comments are due in a few weeks. We already have seen different issues where we think perhaps the EPA is overreaching a little bit. But more importantly, we know that the president in his State of the Union address has talked about issuing a series of executive actions which would have a detrimental effect on the state of West Virginia. What we're going to do, which is a little bit different than what this office did in the past, is we're going to read the regulations line by line by line. And we're going to make sure that West Virginia gets involved much earlier in the process. We're not going to wait to the later stages. We're going to be monitoring these issues up front so we can speak more aggressively. There are basically 3 different approaches that the state of West Virginia can take with respect to the extraction industry. You could be inactive, which is part of what we saw in the past in the AG's office. You could be reactive, or you could be proactive. We're going to be proactive because we've seen so many different types of issues where the federal government is not respecting the state's authority to regulate in this area. So we're going to help the state of West Virginia try to speak with one voice to make sure that when regulations go forward, they're consistent with the rule of law.
It's tough to communicate inside the Beltway up in our nation's capital.
Right.
You're going to be communicating from outside that Beltway. Your challenges are going to be very strong. How do you think you're going to be able to put that word out there as strongly as you just mentioned?
Well, I think a couple of different ways. I used to be a staffer, senior staffer on the House Energy and Commerce Committee. I've already spoken to some of the members on that important committee. I think we can develop collaborative approaches to work together with members in the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. And if we begin to think more strategically in terms of getting involved earlier in the process, we can involve the House Energy and Commerce Committee. We can involve the Senate Energy Committee. We can do so in a very sophisticated manner, a little bit different than what we've seen in the past. So I think part of it is just doing the right kind of outreach, but also ensuring that all of the states that are negatively affected by these agency regulations work together. When I was recently at a National Association of Attorneys General meeting, I spoke with other colleagues about ways that we can analyze issues and work together. So if we have a couple people working on these issues, they have a couple people working on these issues, maybe we can think about different ways to share information and collaborate in a manner that puts the interest of individuals first. So those are some different ways. I think we're going to be far more proactive than you've seen in the past.
Now, obviously, you'll be working with the state's DEP office
Certainly.
and Secretary Huffman, but how important is it going to be for you to be reaching out to members of the Coal Association to get their feedback to you, because they're out there on the front lines also?
Absolutely. I mean, we want to meet with the coal miners, we want to meet with the coal manufacturers, we want to meet with any interested party that cares about the rule of law in the state. So what you'll see over the course of the next few weeks is that we're going to begin to go out there and start to talk more aggressively about these issues. We're going to talk about having a job summit and a listening tour so we can identify some of the most pernicious regulations that are affecting our extraction industries and other businesses in the state. But we want to do this in a collaborative manner. I've talked to the governor about this, to the DEP secretary, to the legislature. West Virginia acts strongest when it speaks with one voice. And whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or independent, I don't care. I want to work together with you to make sure that we put West Virginia interests first.
Final question. It seems like Davy and Goliath sometimes. How do you throw that stone just correctly?
Well, the good news is that David beat Goliath, so that's the positive part of this. But I think, look, I'm not going to ever sugarcoat issues for the people of West Virginia. We have a real problem. When this president was elected, that meant bad things for the state of West Virginia. And no one person is going to be able to stop the inexorable trend and what the president wants to accomplish. However, a couple dedicated people, a good brigade of individuals who are focusing on reviewing every regulation can gum up his policies and make it very difficult for him to enact regulations that are inconsistent with the rule of law. He hasn't been able to replace the entire federal judiciary yet, which means that there could be some courts out there that are going to give this a fair hearing. That's ultimately very important. If we can get a fair hearing on these issues and challenge them, I think that we can help our state bridge the gap between 2013 till 2017 when we'll have a new president.
That's about all the time we have for this week's episode. Hopefully you found the 40th Mining Symposium to be extremely informative. We thank you so much for taking time to learn more about the state's leading industry, and thanks for joining us here on the Library Network.